There are things you've always known without knowing how. Fleeting moments. A sense that there was more. A pull you couldn't name. As if part of you was whispering truths the rest of you had forgotten. And maybe it wasn't forgetting at all. Maybe it was the world that asked you to look away, to trade inner knowing for outer noise, to replace wonder with certainty. But the vision within you never left. It was simply waiting for silence, for stillness for you. This isn't a journey to somewhere new. It's a returning. Not to what the world told you was real, but to what you felt before words, before doubt. Before you were taught to mistrust what you already knew, you don't need to seek far. You only need to listen inward. Because maybe, just maybe, you were never blind. You were just waiting to remember how to see. You were born into a world already spinning full of lights, sounds, names, and stories. Before you even had words, you had a sense. Not the 5 we all learned to name, but something softer, quieter. A presence inside you that noticed things. Maybe you felt it in a moment of stillness, when you stared at a flickering candle flame and lost track of time, or when someone smiled at you, but your body knew it wasn't real. You couldn't explain how you knew, you just did. And then, like most children, you learned not to talk about it. You learned what the world told you to see. Letters on chalkboards, numbers on clocks, faces in crowds. You were taught what counted and what didn't. And slowly, the forgotten sense, what ancient mystics called the third eye, dimmed, not because it died, but because attention is power, and yours was pulled away. But some part of you remembers. That part has always been there, like a faint vibration behind your forehead. Like a dream you almost recalled upon waking. In ancient Egypt, they believed this wasn't imagination. It was memory. Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, and hidden knowledge, didn't speak in commands. He whispered in symbols. He left tablets not to be obeyed, but to be decoded. Not to give you new beliefs, but to help you uncover what was always inside. The third eye isn't about visions or magic tricks. It's a way of perceiving one that looks beneath the surface. It sees not just the image, but the energy. Not just events, but patterns. It asks not what happened, but what's being shown here. And if you've ever felt a flicker behind closed eyes, a light that isn't physical, or a sudden knowing that didn't come from logic, that's it. That's inner vision beginning to stir. Science calls the pineal gland a biological clock. Mystics call it a cosmic antenna. Both agree. It sits in the center of the brain, untouched by time, sensitive to rhythm, light, and energy. It may not see in the way your eyes do, but when it opens, you begin to sense the invisible architecture of reality. No one can open it for you. No one can prove it to you. But when you start to feel more than you see, you're already on the path. And maybe that's why you're here, not because of a viral trend or mystical hype, but because deep down, you felt that pull. That something about the way you've been told to see the world isn't the whole picture. That beneath the noise, there's a signal, a forgotten sense, waiting. This is the invitation, not to believe, not to reject, but to pause, to soften, and to listen inward. Because you were never blind, only taught to look away from what mattered most. Have you ever wondered why so many people seem to move through life like sleepwalkers? Eyes wide open, but somehow not really seeing. There's a strange numbness we've come to accept, constant scrolling, constant noise, and yet a haunting absence of clarity. From the moment you were born, you were given lenses to look through. Not physical ones, but mental, cultural, emotional filters. You were told what's real, what matters, what to chase, what to fear. They handed you stories. This is success. This is truth. This is who you are. But who decided that? From school bells to breaking news, you've been trained to react, to consume, to perform, to keep up. The world rewarded your compliance and labeled your stillness as laziness. So you stayed busy, focused, productive, and somewhere along the way you forgot how to see. And here's the unsettling part: they didn't have to blindfold you. They just needed to keep your attention, because attention is the gateway to perception. If they could flood your senses, they could shape your world. Think about it. How often do you question the images you're shown, the narratives you're fed? We scroll past symbols we don't understand, react to emotions we don't own, and make decisions based on fears that were planted, not born. The truth is your eyes were trained to scan, not to see, to gather, not to perceive, to reflect culture, not to reveal consciousness. But something in you has been stirring. Maybe you've noticed it in the quiet moments. That flicker of light when your eyes are closed. That strange pull toward nature, silence, ancient symbols. That feeling you get when a stranger speaks your truth without knowing your name. These aren't coincidences. They're signals, whispers, nudges from the deeper self that never forgot how to see. And that self, your inner vision, is waking up. What if what you've been calling reality is just a finely edited version of something much larger, stranger, and more beautiful? What if your intuition isn't just a quirk, but a skill that was trained out of you? What if the things you're starting to feel, the tension in crowds, the heaviness in certain places, the beauty that makes you cry for no reason, aren't signs you're broken, but signs you're breaking free? You don't need to become anyone new. You only need to undo the programming that told you what to believe, what to fear, and what to ignore. There is no single enemy here, no evil wizard behind a curtain. The system is subtle. It wears many faces: entertainment, tradition, even love. But its goal is simple: keep you from seeing too much. Keep you small, distracted, predictable. But here you are noticing something's off. That's not weakness, that's sight. So if you felt like there's more than meets the eye, if you've caught yourself crying during a song or feeling a truth you can't explain, you're not imagining things, you're remembering. And what you're remembering is your own inner clarity. Your third eye doesn't open with force, it opens with recognition. And now, you begin to recognize the world not as it was given, but as it truly is. Tucked deep in the center of your brain lies something so small, it was once dismissed as useless. A leftover, a mystery, the pineal gland, but the ancient ones didn't overlook it, far from it. To them, it was the eye of Horus, the seat of the soul, the bridge between dimensions. Today, science calls it an endocrine gland regulating your sleep-wake cycles with melatonin. But if that's all it does, why does it sit perfectly aligned with the geometric center of the brain, where no other sense organ exists? Why does it look, under a microscope, like a human eye? And why, across cultures from Egypt to India to the Andes, was this one structure so consistently revered? The answer isn't in textbooks. It's in experience. Have you ever closed your eyes during meditation and seen flashes of light, like tiny stars bursting behind your eyelids? That wasn't your imagination. That was activity. Energy moving, the gateway stirring. Modern neurotheology, the study of spiritual experiences in the brain, has shown that certain areas of the brain light up during deep states of meditation, prayer, and breathwork. Specifically, regions tied to orientation, ego perception, and higher cognition. These aren't just relaxing moments. They're reorganizations of reality. Your breath, when focused with intention, changes your brain. Not just chemically, but electrically. It shifts your frequency. And guess what sits right at the center of that shift? The pineal gland. It functions like an antenna, or more accurately, a lens, one that doesn't point outward, but inward into the field of perception that lies beyond sight. Some have theorized it produces DMT, the so-called spirit molecule. While this hasn't been confirmed in humans, the allure remains that there's a biological mechanism inside us, capable of generating spiritual visions. But let's be clear, this isn't about psychedelics. This isn't about escaping reality. It's about uncovering more of it. The inner light you begin to perceive during meditation isn't hallucination. It's resonance. It's your brain's electrical activity syncing with subtle energy fields that most people never train themselves to feel. That moment of clarity, that image that arrives without warning, that intuition that saves you from a wrong turn, these aren't supernatural, they're natural, just untapped. And the pineal gland, when nurtured through stillness, breath, and attention, becomes your tuning fork. Breath is the key. Every inhale brings not just oxygen, but frequency. Every exhale releases tension, physical, mental, and energetic. When you breathe with awareness, you begin to tune your perception, not just your body. You begin to see, not just the surface of things, but the patterns, the meanings, the echoes behind words, the emotions beneath actions. You stop needing proof and start recognizing truth. That's the real function of the pineal gland. Not just a gland, but a translator, a receiver, a gateway to the world within and the world behind this one. So the next time you sit in silence and feel something shift, when the light flickers behind your eyes and your chest softens, don't dismiss it. You didn't imagine that moment, you remembered it. What if everything around you was speaking, but in a language you were never taught to hear? What if the world wasn't silent, but coded? The ancients didn't write in instructions. They etched in keys. The emerald tablets of Thoth, often dismissed as mystic poetry, weren't guides in the conventional sense. They were puzzles, layered symbols meant to stir something dormant within you. Like a melody that unlocks a memory you never lived, but always carried. And this language of the invisible, it's still here, still whispering. You've seen it, that number that repeats, the image that follows you, the animal that shows up at just the right time. You dismiss it as coincidence, but deep down, it feels personal, almost intentional, because it is. Symbols don't operate on logic. They bypass the gatekeepers of reason and speak directly to the soul. They don't explain, they awaken. A serpent curling through a staff, an eye inside a triangle, a flicker of light when you're thinking of someone. These are not decorations. They're activations. They carry frequency. Thoth knew that. He didn't want followers. He left behind signposts. Symbols not to be worshipped, but to be recognized. And when you see them, something happens. A sensation, a pull, a pause. You don't just look, you feel seen. This is the real language of awakening. Not words, not doctrines, but resonance. So how do you begin to read it? Start with noticing. Patterns are the doorway. When something keeps showing up, pause. What were you thinking in that moment? What decision were you about to make? What were you avoiding? Because often, symbols appear when you're at a crossroads. Then, explore the emotion. Don't ask, what does this mean? Ask, what does this stir in me? The answer isn't in a dictionary, it's in your body, your intuition. Some call them spiritual signs. Others call them personal mythologies. Doesn't matter. What matters is they are uniquely yours. Think of it this way: when you dream, your mind speaks in metaphor. So does the universe. The more you tune in, the more fluent you become. And suddenly, the world feels alive with meaning. The random becomes rhythm. The background becomes message. You start to read reality. You begin to trust that you're not lost, you're being guided. Not by something outside you, but by the part of you that's always been connected to the whole. So if lately you've been seeing the same numbers, or hearing the same phrase, or dreaming of the same place, pause. Don't dismiss it. The universe may not shout, but it leaves clues. Tiny sparks of meaning waiting to be noticed. Symbols that don't point outward but inward, toward the part of you that already knows. Now ask yourself, what symbols have been following you lately? Because chances are they've been waiting for you to finally look back. You don't need to believe in anything mystical to awaken inner vision. You just need to breathe. Not the shallow kind you do while rushing from task to task. Not the breath that only reaches the top of your lungs while you check your phone. But a different kind of breath. Intentional, rooted, deep. Because breath is not just air, it's rhythm, it's frequency. It's the bridge between what you feel and what you know. In ancient traditions, breath was never seen as separate from consciousness. It was the thread that stitched the visible and invisible together. And when it comes to awakening the third eye, your inner lens, breath is the key. Not belief, not intensity, just breath. This surprises people. We've been taught to chase visions, to force experiences, to look for flashes of insight like fireworks in the sky. But the third eye doesn't open that way. It unfolds, like a flower that knows when the sun is warm enough, when the soil is steady. It doesn't need effort. It needs readiness. So here's something simple you can do. No tools, no chance, no perfect posture. Just a few minutes in the morning before the world pulls you back into its rhythm. Close your eyes. Sit still. Inhale slowly through the nose. Feel the breath rise to the center of your head, not your chest, not your belly, but imagine it gently lifting into that quiet spot behind your forehead. Then exhale just as slowly through the mouth. Repeat this softly for a few rounds. What you're doing is more than relaxing. You're activating. You're sending subtle vibrations to the pineal gland. You're whispering to a part of you that's been asleep, not with noise, but with stillness. This is pineal breathing. At first, you might not feel anything. That's okay. This isn't about performance. It's about presence. And with time, you may begin to notice little things, colors behind closed eyes, clarity in the middle of chaos, a quiet yes or no that rises from within before the mind can argue. These aren't visions, they're perceptions. You're not here to prove anything to anyone. You're here to come home to your own awareness, to stop needing the world to reflect what you already carry inside. And you don't need to see clearly. You just need to be still long enough to sense that something is seeing through you. Inner vision doesn't come with fanfare. It comes with familiarity. A growing sense that life has layers you hadn't noticed before, not because they weren't there, but because you hadn't slowed down enough to feel them. So start with the breath. Let that be your first practice. Let that be the place you return to when doubt creeps in, when the world gets loud, when you forget what you came here to remember. Because the breath never leaves you, and neither does your vision. You've been told that sight comes from the eyes. But what about those moments when your eyes are closed, and yet something flickers behind them? A pulse of light, a swirl of color, a flash that vanishes the moment you try to hold it. You may have thought it was random, or a trick of the brain. But what if it was? What if it was the beginning of something ancient, awakening within you? Many who begin this path report the same quiet signals before they even know what they mean. A subtle pressure between the eyebrows, an ability to sense the mood in a room before anyone speaks, goosebumps when truth is spoken, tears in meditation for no reason they can explain. You're not imagining it. These are not accidents. They're signs that your inner vision is already opening. Not in some dramatic burst of enlightenment, but in the way a dawn begins. Soft, steady, certain. Maybe you felt a presence in silence. Maybe you've noticed synchronicities too precise to dismiss. Maybe you've had moments when someone speaks, but you hear something deeper than the words. This isn't illusion. This is perception deepening, and you're not alone. In the comments of videos like this, people write things like, "I saw flickering light last week and didn't know what it was. Now I understand." Or, "I started feeling everything more energy, emotions, even the silence. I thought I was losing it." You're not losing it. You're finding it. You're finding the part of you that was never blind, only quiet. In a world that tells you to doubt your intuition, to suppress what can't be measured, it's radical to trust your senses. The subtle ones, the internal ones. But here's the truth. You were never meant to go through this alone. Every whisper of inner sight connects you to a web of others, those who are also remembering. A silent chorus of awakening souls spread across the globe, each beginning to see through the veil. So if you've ever questioned what you're experiencing, this is your confirmation. You don't need to have visions. You don't need to know ancient texts by heart. You only need to trust what's gently revealing itself to you. A feeling, a knowing, a light not outside but within. It's not the end of something. It's the beginning. The veil isn't torn away. It softens. And one day, you realize it was never really there. Once inner vision awakens, most people expect a grand transformation like a lightning bolt, a sudden flood of clarity, a voice from beyond. But the truth is quieter. Nothing outside you may look different. Your home, your job, your city all may appear the same. And yet, something fundamental shifts. It begins in the spaces between. You start choosing differently, not because someone told you to, but because the old options no longer feel aligned. A conversation that once drained you now feels avoidable. A person you once chased no longer echoes inside you. A path you never considered begins to pull at your chest, not with urgency, but with warmth. It's not louder, it's deeper. Inner vision doesn't shout, it whispers. And that whisper begins to guide your life not with commands, but with subtle tugs, small yesies, and quiet no's. You might find yourself slowing down, not out of laziness, but because each moment begins to stretch wider, revealing more. A breeze feels like a message. A silence feels like a song. You stop rushing, not because there's nowhere to be, but because you've finally arrived here. Even love changes. It deepens. You stop loving for security or validation. You begin to love because you see the truth behind someone's eyes, see the parts they hide, and recognize them as reflections of your own. This doesn't make life easier, but it makes it truer. You'll still face challenges, but you'll move through them differently, with less resistance, with more presence. Like water flowing around a rock, not trying to change it, just choosing a new path. You may even lose things, people, habits, identities you once clung to. But what you gain is something immeasurable: alignment. The need to prove fades. You no longer need to convince others you've changed. You no longer need external signs to validate your progress. The proof is in your peace, the stillness inside you, the way your breath softens when you remember who you are. Living with inner vision doesn't mean you see through walls or read minds. It means you see through illusion your own, first of all. The illusions that said you're not enough, that you have to compete, that worth is earned. Now, you simply are. And that's enough. This isn't a mountaintop moment, it's a river. It flows quietly, steadily, reshaping everything it touches, not with force, but with presence. So don't look for fireworks. Look for the moments when you choose truth over noise. Love over fear, stillness over struggle. That's when you'll know. You're already living with inner vision. This wasn't about learning something new. It was about remembering. Remembering what was always there beneath the noise, behind the roles, before the world told you who to be. Your inner vision, your silent guide. Not a gift for the chosen few, but a birthright you forgot you carried. It doesn't need proof. It doesn't demand belief. It only waits for stillness. Because truth doesn't shout. It reveals itself when you're ready to see. And now you are. So maybe the question isn't, how do I open the third eye? Maybe the real question is, what has been waiting all this time, hoping you'd finally see it? Not with your eyes, but with the vision that never closed. What is ready to be seen at last from within?